Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's live panel discussion. Yellow Messenger, in association with Knowmax and Ameyo, welcome all of you to this virtual conference on Connected Customer Experience, the catalyst for sustained growth. In a few minutes, we'll be sharing our screen for the further guidelines. The guidelines are as follows. All attendees will be on mute for the duration of the panel discussion. We will be taking questions throughout the discussion, which you can post on the questions panel of the GoToWebinar panel. While posting a question, you can mention your name, your company, and also the person to whom you're directing the question to. All questions will be answered towards the end of the webinar during the question and answer section. The session is being recorded, and all the session recording will be sent to all registrants post the event. This is an overview of the agenda today. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome our wonderful lineup of speakers. Sachin Bhatia, he's a co-founder and global sales and marketing head for Ameyo. Welcome, Sachin.
Thank you so much, and happy to be here. Good morning, everyone, and I am hoping you're staying safe. Looking forward to the conversation.
Next is Tarun Jain. He is the Director of IT and Innovation at Knowmax. Welcome, Tarun.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to be here.
Thank you, Tarun. Our final speaker is Neil Barman. He is the Chief Growth Officer at Yellow Messenger. He will also be acting as a moderator for this discussion. Over to you, Neil.
Sachin and Tarun, welcome to the panel. Great to have you here. We're going to get started to discuss about what's the future roadmap of CX in this pandemic period. So to set the stage, set the agenda, I would like to share a quote by Warren Buffett, where he said that it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. So if you think about it that way, you will do things differently. So a very open-ended question to Tarun and Sachin, to both of you, as how has the customer experience changed before and after the pandemic? I mean, what have been your key observations that you've seen, and what are the trends that you're observing which will affect the brand perception?
Yeah, should I take it first, Tarun?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so obviously the pandemic was not something for which one could have planned a BCP or predicted what would happen. Even today, there's a lot of uncertainty. But a few trends have clearly emerged that we have seen from our customers across geos. The first is, and think of yourself as a human being. After the pandemic, are you more in touch with your friends or less in touch with your friends? Right? Are you engaging more with them and less with them? And the interesting answer is that any bad news that comes in, anytime you feel that somebody that you know is not well, you tend to think of everybody else who's around you and you try to get in touch with them. So the levels of anxiety and the level of connectedness or the emotional well-being being sought by each individual is higher. Now, if you transpose that to a business to consumer scenario, I think consumers in general are also more anxious. Would my order get delivered? Are you taking enough precaution if you're calling a restaurant? So all these anxieties are leading to more interactions that a consumer is having with the business, which is quite a challenge, because everybody's thinking how to do what is really needed, right? And not what we really want to what is our aspiration. People are figuring out in our lives that what was really needed to be done. And the same is the situation with business. The business is thinking, what is, for example, real estate? Would it stay? Would it not stay? Those are questions that are being triggered by the pandemic. Now, the challenge for the customer service function or the experience function is that the need is actually to interact more. But there is a pressure on cost. So how do you sort of augment that? That's one big trend that we have seen, that there are serious cost pressures and there is actually an increased need of engagement. And these two, basically how one balances these and how one finds solutions, which we'll be discussing during the course of the webinar, I think would be the biggest trends that we would have seen in the experience side. The other point is of empathy. The brands that would be empathetic towards their consumers today would create a lasting impact of loyalty in consumers' mind, right? So if you see loan moratoriums, because people are not in position to, you can be as aggressive as you want, but people might not be in position. So if you create that empathy, I think there'll be that connectedness to the brand, and hence that as a part of the experience is also going to define which brands are going to be winning in the future. I mean, those are two trends that we observed from a CX perspective.
Thanks, Sachin. Thanks for sharing that. Tarun, your inputs.
I completely agree with Sachin. Experiences by default, but engagement model has changed. It has more moved from a phygital to a digital one, and consumers are always connected. So that's when you need to have that empathy to make sure there is a human touch which is there. And for the brands to do this, they have to be very, very agile and move from a digital engagement to cognitive engagement with a human touch. That would be leading to superior customer experience.
Okay. So and also adding on to what Sachin and Tarun both of you just mentioned. So we are living in an era where we are quite used to this instantaneous support. I mean, same day delivery has kind of become a norm, and what used to be, we used to call that maybe 5 years back that's a thing of the West, is something which we've got used to. I mean, gone are the days when we used to wait for a week to catch our favorite program on TV. I mean, today kids have the option of doing it on Netflix or YouTube. So that wait period is something which has gone off, and the same applies to customer support or in a CX environment as well. So when you speak about superior customer experience or the product experience, how does a customer experience get dictated, and how well does the consumer perceives, interacts, and leverages a product which ensures such a customer experience, and what does it build? I mean, what does it take to build such great experiences? What are your thoughts?
The ease of use and the meeting users' objective is the key. And today's world, users' focus time is quite low, and time to impact on mind is quite low. So you have to be sure, whatever you deliver, it gives an impact to the user, and you have to make sure, the information, whatever you give, it has to be very structured, and it has to be, it helps in onboarding the customers and usage and helping the usage of the product. What challenge is that, you might create a, world-class product, but if it is unable to connect with the consumer, ease of use is not there, and you might have things, but these are all scattered, it won't help to even use it. And support, today's world, since everybody is connected, your support has to be very, very good. And the solution has to be, intuitive, should be a DIY, so it helps, obviously it takes care of the cost, obviously gives an experience too.
Okay, so Tarun, interesting phrase you mentioned there, DIY. So self-serve seem to be coming up on the surface very often during our conversations and what we are seeing as a market trend. it takes, we all know about it that memorable experience is a sum of many parts. So would you like to elaborate a little bit in terms of what are the key trends that you've seen while enabling that?
So enabling, you would have different factors to it. One is, digital adoption, because as I said, now everybody is digitally connected. So you have to make sure your product, the customer is able to digitally adopt it. And the more interactive you make the product and the support, that helps in, engaging the customer. As we initially said, engagement is the key, since experience is okay, it goes by default. So to making sure engagement, that's when, interactivity comes into place. And to have a superior interactivity, or I would say enhancement, you have to have a great knowledge behind the product, which should, drive the customer engagement as well as your digital engagement.
Okay.
Understood.
Can I add something?
Yes, please.
A couple of years back, we did a basic study, and we all want to basically create memorable experience, right? Now,
yes.
Again, the concept of memorable experience is obviously originating from memory, right? Something that you will remember. Now, I went out in a lot of forums and asked them, tell me an experience that you remember about a brand.
Okay.
And there was this very interesting story of Meru Cabs, which used to be the cab company that pioneered cab aggregation. Yes. And there was a story that was mentioned that it was raining, and I booked the cab. I was not sure whether the cab guy will come. There was traffic jam, but the cab guy made a statement that, sir, you wait. Even if it takes me 2 hours, I will reach you. And the guy actually reached there in 1 hour. And now this was an experience that for somebody was memorable, right? And when we did this ample number of times, we realized that it's always the human on the other side who titillates the memory, right? So I think the product experiences or the journeys that we're talking about, they can be differentiated for a while, but they would be replicated very easily. It's the question of can you get that human being to bring in that emotion, address the anxiety. Only then the memory gets embedded in your head, right? So I think the memorable experiences or the differentiation of the brands would always have a human being who will go out of the way, who will create that moment of truth. You could be wowed by an experience, right? So first time when I booked something by Uber, I said I never need to talk to a human being, right? But the first time when I faced a problem with Uber and I realized I cannot talk to a human being is when the brand experience sort of became a bad memory, right? So I think from a memory standpoint, the human being has to play a very important role. From a differentiated experience, I think staying ahead of the game. So for example, all of us are in touch with our friends on WhatsApp more. Can businesses do that first, right? Can businesses stitch those channels so that it becomes seamless? But they will not become memorable. They will become seamless. It will be like a UI that you don't see, right? It's a very, what they call as effortless experience. Effortless experiences will continue to become table stake, right? So I had to walk into a branch. I could call a call center. I could actually text on WhatsApp. All these are table stake today. Organizations have to make it effortless, but the memorable experiences will be always having a human being on the other side. I mean, that's something that we learned from our customers in conversations, right? What was and as a consumer, think about it. If you have a story that why do you remember a brand, it'll usually be a human being on the other side, which made memorable for you.
Let me add to that.
Yes, please.
With the current, scenario, I would say contactless scenario, making a human touch becomes difficult. That's when, the AI would come into a picture wherein, you would have technology behaving as humans. So that's the real challenge. If we can solve that, that's when we would have an experience to give.
Okay, so I'll just summarize from Sachin what you shared and what Tarun, you touched upon as well. So two key takeaway there for me. One is, of course, you spoke about DIY, the self-serve module, where Sachin, you also spoke about the Uber module, but having the flexibility to reach out to a human as and when required. I mean, I can have my entire need solved on WhatsApp, but is there a possibility where there can be a seamless transition from having robo assistants to having a warm body assist to us? So I think that's one of the key takeaways. And if we think about it as enablers of this experience, if we think this project and come to a stage of ideating or catching on the data points, then during those knowledge gathering and information bases, which will constitute one end of the customer experience spectrum, we can all agree that the other end is constituted by customer support and call center agents. It is important to engage with customers, listen to them, and work quickly and efficiently in identifying the problems and resolving them. We agree to that. But in the battle for this, could you share the role of contact center solution that you are seeing today in delivering the brand promises in this uncertainty that's looming everywhere?
Okay, you stitched it really well, Neil. Even we look at it that there are three sort of entities. There is messages, there is bot, and there is humans, right?
Yeah.
The messages are your timely notifications, which will reduce the anxiety, which basically suppress the need of the customer to reach out. Once the reach out happens, can the information gathering, or transaction be addressed first through a bot, and as soon as there is a point of anxiety, confusion, whenever there's an emotion coming in, can you have a human being? That's the ideal journey in the space. Now on the contact center side, contact centers was always however more we talk about experience as the key, they are always considered a cost center, right? So if there's always a cost pressure, that's the first function one looks at, that what can we do. Interestingly, in the contactless world, right, what we are calling today, I think contact centers, and we have observed this across continents, they are coming in the center stage. And earlier it was that contact center will have to augment the business function. Now contact center is the driving force behind the business function. So whether it's sales, onboarding, service, collections, which are the primary use case that we see in a B2C scenario, this is actually an opportunity that contact center would completely replace what is there in the field, right? So and we have seen that more in B2B, but B2C that has started happening, right? For example, if Byju's is making a sale today, does it require, there is a large contact center at play there, right? It's basically addressing anxiety and the doubts of the parent in taking that next step. Contact centers are going to drive sales, contact center are going to drive service, support, anxiety, emotions, all those things, and are going to take a center stage. The challenge is, how do you run contact centers in such uncertain times, because the physical presence in office itself is difficult, and we believe that remote contact centers are going to play a very important role. Interestingly, in our part of the world, and when I say our part, Southeast Asia, Middle East, Africa, there's a very interesting equation emerging. If let's say you're spending $100 or $200 on an agent, manpower, people cost, 25% is infrastructure cost, right? Yes. And my friend Tarun would know that very well. We have been talking to a lot of customers together, which means that, and typically in a contact center, people cost is about 50%, right? Yeah. So typically 12.5% of gross margin is up for grabs, right? People who can run this remotely, 12.5% gross margin is there. That's the total gross margin that the contact center function actually has. Now, first time, I think you have a business opportunity of bringing contact center in the center, which can drive sales, service, collections, and can reduce cost by 12.5%. This is unprecedented, right? This has never happened. But it's a very hard thing to pull off. I think organizations who will pull this off will be the winners of the future. So yes, you could augment it by intelligence, you could augment it by bots, you could reduce the queries. But something up for grabs right now is you could reduce your cost by 12.5% and still have contact center do more than what it was, right? I think that's a fabulous opportunity, and we are already seeing we moved 50,000 agents at our customer sites remote, and we see more and more. This will give into some very interesting models. You have, see, the skill in the contact center usually is freshers, right? Now imagine
Yes.
that if remote was possible, how about retired people or housewives who are
Absolutely.
absolutely talented can stay at home, work for 3 hours and use their skill. It's going to be unprecedented, man. You will see that what kind of workforce is available to address those queries. It's no longer a fresher job, which is a stepping stone. I think people will come in and they will say, I can work for 3 hours, I can bring in financial independence, and organizations will say the agents could be happy in the environment that they are, their priorities in life are different, and they could assist us. These things is what we're going to see in the next 12 months in the transformation of the function.
Right.
Very interesting point, Sachin. In fact, just to add to that, recently got introduced to a startup which is actually enabling differently able people to do this remote support. So
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a different way in which I look at it. So rather than social distancing on a positive stride, we can call it digital embracing. So
Yeah.
So I think when that is happening, the delivery and the experience that contact centers are playing today is kind of driving the entire brand building and the brand loyalty that is becoming the face of any brand. Tarun, you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, like contact centers, like work from home platforms also come into picture. You have to make sure the interaction is secure and all the data is taken care of. So that's also has enabled, and then since Sachin would also say that mobile clients, you can use a mobile to log into the ACDs and and connect. So it's easy. And with internet connectivity cheaper and mobile phones cheaper, it is also an enabler with for us, in the current scenario.
Yeah.
So
okay. Go ahead, please go ahead.
So it can be anyone, with a very small training time can be used to do a remote support. So it could be, any kind of thing.
So Tarun, this is I mean, wanted to ask you this. So when the entire support is kind of fragmented and remotely happening, knowledge management definitely plays a key role in maintaining the efficiency and the seamless experience, or the same experience that customers were getting when it was a more controlled environment for the brands. So driving that same experience, the role of knowledge management, can you elaborate in terms of how integrating knowledge management on an omni-channel platform can actually provide a better customer experience, or can leverage, and how can we leverage, or how can brands leverage the knowledge management platform to offer that same customer experience which they were doing in a pre-COVID environment?
Sure. So knowledge management, collaboration and cognitive automation is the key to use the knowledge management in the right way. So the omni-channel platforms, you might people coming from any channel, and you need to have a unified knowledge management system which has the same content going across the channels. And then to make it more efficient, so if we integrate, let me give an example of chat. What happens when you do a chat, there is a there will be people will be writing, and if in runtime, if you can grab that information, pass into the knowledge management system, it can pop you the relevant information. So it saves the time for the agent, obviously helps in the efficiency, and then you can push that information in one go to the end customer also. So it could be chat, even in case of, you can push the content. In case of call center, obviously, what you need to answer. So you don't need to go into different screens to find it. So that's when the integration helps. And also like from once you know who the customer is, and if you're integrated with the backend systems, you could make it cognitive. You might skip on so many things to check, status, customer status, could be work order status, what it could be many things. So you don't need to look into different screens. You would have that coming in out as an action to the agent, or it could be in case of self-care also. So you can have that information coming out with automation. And then the knowledge being the
please go ahead.
And then knowledge being the central system which gives all the which would feed into all the different channels, and then so you would have the same information going across, having the seamless experience.
Yeah. Neil, if I can add something, there's another observation, and I think the knowledge management is going to play a very important role. See, contact center is a very, if I may call, there's a lot of tribal knowledge there. Tribal knowledge means, so people are sitting next to each other. There is an experienced agent. Here is a new agent who comes in, and the customer is asking a query. He will put him on mute and say, boss, this is what he's saying. What do we usually do in this case, right?
Yes.
And that is how the contact center tribal knowledge gets built up, right? And I've seen this in large organizations, small organizations. That's how contact centers function. It's a very, I learn from you, you learn from me. There's a learning by observation. There's also a learning by the buddy or the supervisor, right? Supervisor is immediately available. Contact center guy raises his hand. The supervisor comes in and immediately coaches him what is to be done. Now in remote scenarios, unfortunately, that's a very hard thing to pull off. And hence the standardization is going to play a very important role. So, and this would play a very important role going forward. Today you have agents who were there, right? If I was an insurance agent, I'm an insurance agent. Now slowly, the churn and the mixing would happen. When a new guy comes in, what does he rely on when he's answering, right? It has to be structured knowledge, which I think it's a pivotal moment that contact centers will have to invest in onboarding and standardizing knowledge, because it was augmented by tribal knowledge earlier, but today the tribal knowledge is going to be very, very hard to pull off, and hence the knowledge management is going to play a very, very critical role. Yeah,
because agents are remotely sitting and there is no one-to-one interaction happening. So how does the knowledge grow?
Correct. So there has to be a clear guideline, and that guideline can only happen from a knowledge management system.
Absolutely. And Sachin and Tarun, exactly what you said. I mean, even my experience has been, I mean, from the time the remote working or the remote customer support has come into existence, we have seen so many of Yellow Messenger's customers actually putting the request across to us that we should enable some of the bot functionality for their remote support agents as well, where the agents would have the access to actually access information and then share it with the customer. So even when there's a transition happening from an automated conversation to a live conversation, we are enabling the knowledge management for the agents in order to drive those discussions there. And this is something which was essential even in a pre-COVID world, but may not have been looked at with that importance. But yeah, it's becoming the absolute necessity. It's a must-have today for delivering that customer experience. And Sachin, one interesting point which you made there in terms of how the enablement is happening. I mean, the tribal knowledge. So today, the knowledge management is replacing the tribal knowledge, and that's in a remote working environment. So the immediate question that comes to mind is, do you think that the remote contact center or the digital contact centers that exist today are here to stay, or is it just a temporary solution to the problem? And if it stays, what does it mean for the industry?
So today, DOT has announced the extension of the OSP till 31st of December. I don't know why they're taking baby steps. We should address the elephant in the room. This is not going to go away. And I'm saying because of two reasons, guys. One is, of course, the pandemic. But I think post-pandemic, that unit economics equation that I've told you, if we were entrepreneurs and we were doing a business plan of how this function would run and we immediately see a 12.5% margin there, would we ever want to do this in a physical environment? Yes, it's going to be challenging, and I'll talk about challenges. But I think that the way workplaces are going to function in the contact center, it's going to be very, very different. I think office would be a place where you build that tribe and build that culture, but the work is going to happen from anywhere, right? So you will have hybrid spaces where somebody will, if there's training to be imparted, if there's culture to be built, if there's fun to be had, that's the place what we'll call as office. And the work will happen from whichever physical place I'm comfortable with in working. So that's one. It's not going to be trivial to do this, right? It's obviously when pandemic happened, it was a knee-jerk, and there have been solutions that immediately came in. But if somebody is looking at really long-term, there are three problems that we see that you need to address very, very carefully and in a strategic manner, not as a knee-jerk reaction. The first is, and I'll tell stories around it. I mentioned, if on the floor the agent says, I have a problem, it's very easy for an IT guy to come in, figure out where is the problem. But if he's saying from home that I have a problem, what do you trust? Do you trust the device? Do you trust the network? Do you trust the agent? How do you find that out? What's the cost of finding it out? What's your trust in finding that information, right? Can you proactively govern your infrastructure so that you have trust in that infrastructure? That's going to be this is a long-term view, right? People implemented VPN and said, okay, now we are good to go, but it's not going to happen. Yeah. Second point on this
VPN challenge.
You have a large group of people who are functioning, right? You would have seen that suddenly you have a doubt of what do we trust, right? So that's going to be a long-term challenge. The second is, of course, that concern around security and data. An agent's login is giving information to certain data. Now, are you sure that it's the agent logging in, right? In a physical environment, that's very simple to control, but in a remote location, how do you tie it to a device? How do you tie it to two-factor authentication? In long term, again, I'm saying these are problems that you need. Can there be facial recognition? Can we make sure that it's Sachin who is logging in? And if we can, then it's a lot of trust again, right? The second kind of problems is going to be the onboarding and collaboration, right? So we talked about this a little bit, that if you're bringing in new people, how do they get onboarded onto your processes? How do they collaborate amongst each other? Contact center is a very buzzy place. It's a place that gets fed by noise, right? Somebody comes in, walks into the contact center floor, there's so much energy, and they fill themselves with energy, and then Tarun would have observed that. It's a very energetic place. How do you now create a similar collaborative environment in a remote scenario? And the third is, which I think is an easier problem to solve, when a business function is looking at matrices or KPIs, they used to do it weekly, monthly, and there is more control there. I think that frequency will have to be more real time, more what's happening today, what are we observing today, kind of thing, which I think is an easier problem with BI to solve. But the first two are hard problems. They are not trivial problems. That how do you make sure that infrastructure can be trusted? How do you make sure that collaboration and onboarding is happening smoothly? If one is able to crack these three problems, I think they will be a winner. So contact centers are going to stay remote, guys. No doubt about it. If you're still waiting for a normal to happen, this is the normal. It's not going to change. There's ample evidence. The only exceptions could be geographies where unit economics doesn't match. Saudi Arabia is one example. We have realized that the equation of 25% doesn't match there. So there might be other driving forces to push it. But in our part of the world, India, Philippines, Indonesia, Nigeria, Kenya, we've spoken to customers across. If they can, they will. No doubt about it.
About to the data security challenge, like we were discussing with someone, like Amazon, what they've done is For their contact centers, if you want to give a work from home, they give their own device. So they have their own, PC, which you need to give it to the agent. He would log into that. And the OS is again on the cloud. So everything is secure. So, but then that means, you have to go to that lengths to do it. So that's again a cost implication is there. Otherwise, you would find, we are working on a work from home platform to, taking care of these data security and quality issues.
Yeah.
Got it. And so Tarun, as you mentioned, of course, this is an investment, this is an upfront capex for any brand in terms of enabling this. And on the other hand, when we talk about knowledge management platforms also, right, there are different file formats, different tools which brands are used to using. Is there any challenge that you see that brands will actually face in order to kind of collate it into a singular platform? According to you, how can this be simplified?
Yeah, that's a real challenge.
Amazon way of giving everybody a PC and giving the cloud. What is the other simplified way?
So the real challenge, being from the contact center background, I understand this challenge. Multiple systems, multiple information. It's very, very difficult for an agent to work on. And then at contact centers, AHT and post resolution, they drive the cost. So and then now people are trying to move from a document management system to a knowledge management system. But the real challenge is, they've got so many different documents, different formats. It's very difficult to, gather onto in a single platform. And then if you think of doing it manually, it's impossible. Like one of the big telecom operators, they had almost 10,000 documents. And you cannot even think, moving that to manually and, making it, a static document into a knowledge management, actionable. It's very difficult. So that's when you need a AI enabled, a migration tool which does it for you in a single click. So that's a challenge we have been able to solve. It could be, any kind of file, any format. So that there is a backend AI engine which takes care of, all the things and plugs it into a knowledge management system to make it more usable. And, it would always, as the next extension is to the conversational AI part, then, it will automatically pick up the keywords and everything, create its own knowledge from the documents. And then I would say it might lead to creating a knowledge graph in itself. So that's the way forward. But the challenge is, how when they think, can they move from DMS to a KMS? So that's the challenge which pushes them back. So,
yes.
So that's when but there are tools which would help in doing this. And then when you said multiple systems, so but then cognitive automation is the way. So we are doing for one of the big operators. They have got n number of systems. So we are collating all the information from all the systems, putting AI logic to it, and moving the decision trees accordingly, so that you can save time and remotely, like in case of a remote agent, you can't be giving access to everything, security and everything comes into nothing. No, it would be a single screen wherein the agent need to act. So you give access to a single system. So it helps in management also, and obviously security.
Neil.
Yes, Sachin.
So, I'll take a little bit of devil's advocate role here. If the challenge is, and I think all three of us understand that very well, the challenge is when the ops guy or the head of CX thinks of it as a magic wand. I think,
yes.
I think all of us understand. So let's take the best search algorithm in the world, right? And I trust that to be Google today, which basically has kept evolving. How many times are you able to get what you want on the first go, right? Let's take that as a basic benchmark. And that percentage is increasing. Now you add the complexity of a vertical or a context which is happening in a contact center or a customer service scenario, it will basically make the problem more difficult. So I think what kind of projects I have seen succeeding is when there is absolute clarity of what do we want to achieve out of this. So for example, let's say if Tarun's project is there, we basically want that anything to do with account opening, we should be able to structureize it, right? Now, that requires a little bit of identification that is that the biggest problem, like a product management problem. Is that the biggest problem you want to solve? Can you put a number to that problem? Can you put a value to that transaction? And now let's take one project to execute that. I think wherever people have done those things, and similarly, I think with you guys, and Raghu is a good friend, he and I chat about it, right? If you're very clear that my focus is that I'm going to take a retail order of these categories, then you can design the experience and improve the experience. The challenge is, as soon as we talk about these technologies, the other side thinks you put it and everything from tomorrow starts working like magic. There is a lot of energy that needs to go in identifying that part of the problem, clearly defining the use cases of the problem. And then, so like he said, how do you eat an elephant? One piece at a time. These projects are those kind of projects, right? You take one small bit and start adding it, and as you start seeing results, right? So the typical tipping point is, can you get 6 to 8% of the queries getting automated? After that, increasing that by a percentage point itself takes a lot of effort. But if you have worked and saying, okay, here is one function which is adding 1%, here is one kind of queries which is adding 0.5%, that is how you do it, and those projects are really, really successful. But you have to, it's not because of fear of missing out or a magic that is happening, it's because of the grind that has been put behind it and the tech available to do it, right? So the tech is available, speech to text is available, intent detection is available, OCR is available for digitization, searching is available, all these things are available. How do you fit these? That has to be dependent on the problem you're solving at that point of time, at least today. It might get to a stage that you just put an algorithm and it's able to figure out. It's not, I mean, being a computer science engineer, we are not at that stage today.
Yeah. Like the other day, I was discussing with a large enterprise, and they were like, why do we need to even feed the information to the knowledge base? It should, because since there are conversations, you should listen to the conversation and create your own knowledge base. And it should, pop up the knowledge, a very idealistic view, because they thought, AI, it can do anything.
So Sachin, I wanted to ask you this. I mean, as you mentioned, right, that the remote contact centers are here to stay. I was curious to jump into my next question there with you and ask you, like, what do you see are going to be the key factors that's gonna govern the importance of customer experience in this remote environment, and more importantly, what are the challenges that you foresee for the customer support heads that they will come across in driving this remote customer support strategy?
So we touched this, Neil, briefly, but because this is the most important thing, and not as a knee-jerk reaction, but in the long term, if you're planning to move to remote, I think the first is going to be investing in governance of infrastructure. How do you make sure that you could trust whatever is happening? Like Tarun gave an example of an Amazon controlled device. It could be an application on the device, or it could be a simple thing like you are able to absolutely make sure that the agent is actually logging in and having those control parameters that, for example, if I'm in a conversation with Neil, I can only look at his data, but I cannot download. Or in a mobile, I cannot record or cannot take screenshots. Those are things that have already happened. And thinking of it as something different from that you just take an office PC and put it in house and there is a network connectivity. There are different challenges around that governance, that it's basically trusting in an environment that you cannot control, right? So that's the first challenge, which I think is gonna be key. The second is the onboarding collaboration challenge. How do you still make still make culture, still make knowledge dissipation standardized when you're getting new agents on board, right? Not the existing agents. And the third is the operational KPI. Would you continue to define it or measure it at the frequency that you were doing earlier, or do you do course correction faster? I think those are the three that we have observed to be primary driving factors in succeeding in remote cases.
Okay.
The other broad strategic objective is that start measuring contact centers on actual business results. So sales are going to be driven from contact centers. KYC is one example where the claim is that the onboarding journey, you are reducing costs by 90% and you're reducing drop-offs by 20%. This is in financial institutes today. So contact centers should be responsible for the total duration it's taking and the number of people they are able to convert on the KYC, not just handling calls or the handling time, right? So I think the kind of people who would join contact centers would be different. I talked about it. They would want to be responsible for results rather than saying, this is my job, I'm doing my job. But the three building blocks are infrastructure governance, onboarding, collaboration, and business KPIs. I think how do you operationally measure or how do you business-wise measure the success of the contact centers? Those are three strategic building blocks. I think knee-jerk, everybody has done it already. We are third month of lockdown, fourth month of lockdown right now. So people have managed to run their contact centers. The question is, can they now make it permanent by implementing these changes?
Got it. And one of the, we briefly touched upon this as well during the discussion of the knowledge management. The question of why should I upload files on a knowledge management application, something like that. And of course, the access to that knowledge is something which is also going to have an importance second to none. And but then if you look at it, the other challenge there has been that over the last decade or so, right, we have seen the knowledge bases or the information being available across different media formats. Today we have Google Documents, we have YouTube, we have so many different formats in which the knowledge exists today. And there has been a continuous effort from the marketers around the world where they have said that we should continue the conversation with customers and we should enable the information being available to them in a consumable format in which they want it. So here, I wanted to ask Tarun, you primarily, and then Sachin, you should also share your thoughts. Do you think in keeping up with such trends, do you think conversational AI here would actually help in delivering these repositories of information to customers in the format that they want? Not only, the information also is selective. They should have the option to consume the information that they want and in a format or in a channel in which they want. Do you think this conversation model or how do you think this conversation model can increase the efficiency of delivering knowledge to the customers and users of any product or services?
I think, the conversational AI should help because, since you have knowledge and then there's a conversation which is going on, so you can take out the intent and the context. So that makes, that makes easy to find the relevance of, what exactly the customer is needing. Otherwise, if you don't understand the intent and context, you would be passing on any other information. And then when you log into a knowledge management system, you would have the same thing, so much of information there for the same data point. But when you understand the intent and the context, that's when you go into the relevance. And then when you said different data types, normally it's always in FAQ format, which are there. If you go to websites or something, it's like question and answer form. But with the new knowledge bases coming in, you have different formats to give a better experience. It could be visual guides to do you want to do something on an app. There is a step-by-step picture guide to do it. So you would exactly see what you need to do. So make it, user friendly. Another is a decision tree, especially in case of troubleshooting. So you would know what are the steps you need to do, and depending on what you do, the next things pops up. So knowledge management, AI, and then since I said intent and context are the foundation to making sure the coupling works. Otherwise, there are loose ends.
So Sachin, I would take the question to you a little differently. I mean, we spoke about the information flow to customers, which should be constant, and we all understand that the information today rests. I mean, there's abundance of information, and how do you foresee the synchronization happening between the information management and conversational AI, and how do you think this should be available to the remote agents today, so that we don't overshoot their capacity?
Yeah, Neil. So I think transaction answer, we have all seen that you can have data collection, you can have intent collection, and then the agent would come in. But let me take a little philosophical view here, right? The question is, how would synchronization happen, or what part is better addressed by the conversational AI and what part by human being, and how would that play in future? See, if humans are gonna behave like machines, then machines are gonna take over, right? So let's understand what is the crux of the difference between the two, right? There's of course an understanding of human anxiety, emotion. So wherever these parts are detected, the conversation should go to the human being. The second part is decisions. So I think in future the importance of the contact center agent is going to increase, because they will actually be taking some decisions, right? Now, it's very hard to trust a machine to take decisions in a fuzzy scenario. If it's an algorithm, pretty simple to do, right? But there are a lot of things that are happening at the same time for somebody to take a decision. What can knowledge base do? Knowledge base can give you more contextual information right now to take a decision. So I think we did Ameyo Knowmax together did a use case for one of our customers, that as the conversation is happening, whether it's on chat or voice, doesn't matter, you're identifying the intent and showing those top knowledge articles that are available for the agent to refer to. You basically making it seamless to search through that information and say, hey man, he's talking about bill plans for this, why don't you just check here. If we could even identify the question, we could actually get an answer from the knowledge base. You could think of it as a bot augmenting it, but essentially you're assisting human to take that decision faster. So this could be through a bot, through a knowledge base, through a search tree, whatever it could be. And wherever a decision is not required, wherever data collection information or a simple algorithmic flow is there, a bot could actually front end. So if you think the whole flow, a consumer comes in, there is basic data collection, which doesn't require decision making. Obviously, a bot is better suited there. As soon as there is fuzziness, confusion, anxiety, the human takes over. Now the bot can assist the human being in getting that information faster. This could be a knowledge base, this could be a knowledge driven bot. That's a hybrid model, the way I am thinking. So that is why I said there is also an angle of messages, right? You're proactively, when do you notify? If somebody has been a regular payer of credit card bill, do you continue to notify him? Do you actually need to? Can you make a more intelligent decision? So these message bot human journey, I think, will get augmented that way. Decisions would still, wherever decisions are to be taken, whenever there's uncertainty, when there is emotion, human comes in. When there is certainty, there is clarity, you have detected the intent, and you know that, by a certain confidence factor that, and this will keep increasing, no doubt about it. Today it might be at 6, 8, 10%, this will go to 30%, this will go to 80%, but the value of the rest 20% would become manifold in describing or defining the experience of the brand. Yeah.
Add on to this, AI would augment, whatever humans do, making life easy. So obviously, they can't take over. Otherwise, world would have been taken over by machines by now. So I was in a conference, where an AI professor was there from Oxford. So, and that's when he said, earlier nobody used to come into my classes. Now everybody wants to be in my class. But with the current AI usage, we are just using 1% or 2% of the real power of AI in the current scenario. It's more of, as he called it, it was a rule-based AI rather than, a simple artificial intelligence. Because it's a human who is creating whatever the AI does. So it would augment the humans for sure.
Yeah, I came across. I think this was a tweet that I came across where it said that if your customers are asking a question, answer it. If your customers go on asking that question, automate it. And I think that's where it'll play a significant part where there has to be synchronization and a well-defined marriage between the knowledge management piece with conversational AI, and that can transition to a remote support through the contact centers. I think that, in my mind, I look at that as the next era of a connected customer experience. That will actually build the brand identities. But let me now take a little different stand. I mean, we spoke about customer experience so far. Let me now tie it to the ROI machines. I mean, how do you? I mean, it's difficult, as Sachin, you mentioned earlier in the discussion, that contact centers or customer support engines are already looked at as a cost center now, and that's in a normal under normal circumstances as well. The challenge is in a COVID environment. How can business link their customer experience initiatives to define ROIs?
So again, I can give a good answer by saying they are not cost centers, but let's assume they are cost centers because that's how they're going to be looked at it, right? I think the first step and the easier step or a baby step to take is channels. So if you look at across channels, there are varied costs today, right? Physical was the most expensive, call being the second most, and then I think email being the lowest, chat is 1/5 of the call, right? The good news is that the next generation actually prefers chat, right?
Yes.
You even have romances happening on chat now, right? So obviously, if I feel that what people exhibit in the romantic life, that's the easiest to replicate emotion wise, right? So for example, on a lighter note, when would humans be replaced? The day I'm anxious and I want to talk to a bot and not to my wife or my girlfriend, right? That day, if we ever reach that day, that is the day when you don't need a human being on the other side to be addressing. But that day is far away, right? But the channel of chat is definitely a preferred channel that we have seen, right? So I think, and I've written about it, I think WhatsApp as a medium, it's such a ubiquitous medium that so let's go back to that example of message, bot, and human being, right? So
yes.
You get a WhatsApp notification that your payment is due. You get a WhatsApp notification that your order is delayed. And you can actually now ask a question. Now that question can actually be answered through a bot, right? So for example, can I reschedule my delivery? I'm not at home. A bot can do that for you. Or if it's more complex, a human being can take over. So I think the channel augmentation would be, and that has already happened. It was, I'm a holder of a credit card. I got a notification on WhatsApp. I knew about WhatsApp being a channel now, and I replied to that message saying I have already paid, and there was a human being who I am assuming it's a human being, who immediately answered that yes, and it actually tried to pitch me another product there and then, right? This is multiple flows happening on this long chat window, right? This used to be separate flows. So there was a notification, there was a human being answering it, and maybe a knowledge-based pitch that here is Sachin's profile, why don't you try and pitch it? I'm assuming it's that way. So I think the cost, the experiments around moving channels which means you're shifting conversations to other channels. I was talking to one gentleman from Bajaj, and you can do this very simply. If your IVR wait times are very high, why don't you just give them an option to start a chat on WhatsApp, right? And then have a bot augment it. If you have already identified the intent, the bot could actually send a policy or a report or whatever has been identified as an intent. So these small journeys broken down, re-engineered, would reduce cost, right? But you'll have to think of them as each journey individually rather than a piecemeal solution and saying I would. So you can have a strategic direction that over the next 4 years, 5 years, we're going to be handling X% of queries through bot and Y% through the text medium. You can have those hypotheses and then start picking up one journey at a time, and as the experiments get more successful, the cost will reduce. But it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen with a lot of grind, a lot of execution, and a bit of AI.
Yeah. So do you think the brand readiness is there today? Because I mean, we might be pressed for time there in doing the adoption quickly as we survive this pandemic. Do you think the brand readiness is there to do this adoption today? I mean, doing the adoptions.
I mean, Neil, in your use cases also, we have seen, for example, simple order taking has a very good uptake today, right? And we'll have to continuously see that our customers. So what was the option in front of the customer? The option was to actually travel to Big Bazaar or a retail store, and now he could do it. Now Jio is coming and saying, I'll do it for the whole Kirana store, right? So, so there'll be use cases that will come and emerge, which will make you cannot take away the experience. It cannot be at the cost of the experience of the customer, right? That's sort of the bottom line. So if that is at par or a little better or far better than what I was doing, why not? That's the first experiment that I would like to do. That doesn't deteriorate the experiment, reduces my cost, automates everything. We can pick up those, and I think brands are ready to experiment that way because of the cost pressure, right? So we should use this as an opportunity that yes, there's a cost pressure. Now let's look at which journeys are acceptable to the consumers, and consumer behavior is also going to change. The more I can order, the more I can probably talk about refund, about referral, about change on order. Also, I'll get used to it, right? It's a change in behavior, but it's gonna happen, man. The ROI will play. Every decision would have ROI, and if we are asking them to take a leap of faith, it's going to be extremely tough. It has to be driven by ROI, and that is why either the contact center has to become a profit center, they have to be selling, or AI has to augment and reduce the cost without deteriorating experiences. So your story has to be complete. Once you take that complete story, brands are ready, I think.
Tarun, you have thoughts around that as well?
Yeah, I completely agree with Sachin, that pandemic has forced us to think, ways around to make sure, we have efficacy and efficiency in doing things. And then now it would be more on technology, and then as I earlier said, people have different expectations, but setting the expectations right, and there would be a learning curve which would come with time to really give you the ROI. Otherwise, you would have sad experiences, and then nowadays, if one sad experience, you don't use it. So that's a challenge.
Here, I was reminded of a story. I was talking to one of our customers, Muthoot, one of the largest gold loan providers, right? And their challenge was very interesting because all the interaction, all the transaction actually happens in the physical space. When you walk into the branch, you put your gold, it's expected, right? Now, pandemic was a very interesting or a challenging time. The demand for gold loan is increasing because people are, there is more lending happening, right? You want cash. But how do you now deliver? So this was there's increased demand, but you cannot fulfill because of and the challenge they took was, okay, we will take gold loan to home, right? But in pandemic, do you want people to be coming home and staying for a long time? So then they set a KPI for themselves. They said, we will be in and out of the home in 15 minutes because that's what happens in a branch. Now in 15 minutes, so somebody took that challenge that we're going to be in and out in 15 minutes. Now you break it up into what's the KYC part, what's the gold inspection part. They started re-engineering that whole process and then bifurcated what can happen before from the contact center, have been able to reduce the cost, have been able to keep the experience same, 15 minutes in the branch, 15 minutes at home, and able to get more business. It will have to be thought like a complete business use case that way. And they were able to invest in a digital technology that way, right? So has to be that complete a story for somebody to make a call. And I think people will be making more calls because they are forced to think that way.
Of course. So I'll summarize the discussion so far. So we understand that the contact centers are going to stay remote. That of course has definite benefits that the industry will be able to avail. Maybe access to different workforce or the flexibility of the workforce, but at the same time we have to keep the workforce engaged, and that would mean bringing the knowledge management module more simplified into the system. That's and that's no heavy lifting that the brands will have to do. There are platforms available in order to manage that. Customer experience is gonna be omni-channel. It's gonna remain omni-channel, and the more or the better the brands can leverage the channel experience for customers in order to consume the information that they want through whichever channel they want. More importantly, in a diverse geography like India, the other thing, of course, would be consume it in the language that they want. And then if we tie it to the ROI engine, of course, brands will see benefit coming out of it, and we narrated different environments, different situations in which brands have been able to leverage it and have been able to derive ROI out of it. And that's when, if they stay invested, of course, there is definite ROI. So there is a seamless integration of knowledge management to conversational AI, and then that leading to live support of remote agents. So there's a bad thing about all good things, that it comes to end. So with that, we come to the end of the discussion, and I know we might have overshot time a bit, but we are now open to questions. So I'll just see which are the questions that we have here.
Kenil, I have one question for you actually.
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Which use cases have you guys seen, because you guys are present across Southeast Asia and South America, which are some obvious candidates for conversational AI and adoption? I mean, where there's a very super clear value proposition and ROI. Which top 2-3 use cases are you seeing?
So Sachin, at the beginning of the pandemic, we have seen the business continuity challenge as the primary challenge that has come in, where automation across different functions within an organization became a challenge, and that's where we have seen the automation happening for multiple internal use cases. And post that, of course, once that was taken care of, the next stage was the customer conversation part, the market-facing part. So there, of course, enabling it across a seamless channel, and you rightly spoke about WhatsApp being one of the seamless channels. We have seen the demand across all social messaging applications going up. I mean, you talk about WeChat, Zalo, Viber. We have seen the conversation significantly going up on these channels as a market-facing function. The other is access to information, customer trying to access information, and Tarun touched upon DIY. So some of the key information that brands wanted to highlight to customers, but were not able to do it in the pandemic situation, bringing those in a consumable media format to customers on any of the channels that they use, and then actually directing the traffic from there to a conversation is a trend that we have seen across, and that's something which we've seen even in India. That happening even in India is something what we have seen.
Excellent.
Okay. All right. So I think we are. Yeah, Sachin, you were saying something.
There was one question I see somebody has asked. So would we look at a new service called Humans as a Service?
So Sachin, I think that should probably be directed to you. So if you,
I think contact centers, and I don't like the sound of it, but the BPOs are Humans as a Service, and I think they will be more specialized. BPOs offer those services bundled in with knowledge, bundled in with infrastructure, as well as availability of a live human being to serve, and that has existed. They will continue to exist and will become more specialized, if that's what the question is. I think, yeah, we've run out of time, guys, but yeah, good discussion.
So yes, so we have definitely run out of time, and thank you, Sachin, thank you, Tarun, for sharing your viewpoints here. It was lovely chatting with you, and to all our audience, thank you for joining in today. And if you have any questions, would request you to share your questions with us. Even offline, we will be able to answer those questions. Thanks, Tarun. Thanks, Sachin. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe. Take care. Bye.